So, what the question I had asked you is in action movies, who are the greatest characters of all time? Now, that question is a question that I've asked in different ways for about 15 years. And I've tried to be very careful in how I ask it because I've asked it in different ways almost every year because I wanted to make sure I wasn't skewing the results. I've asked who are the greatest heroes, and then I got certain results, and so I said, well, who are the greatest heroes and heroines? And then people would say like, what's a heroine? And they'd spell it like the drug, and I'd say like, what's okay? How do people not know that word? The difference, anyways. And then I would say like, who are the greatest role models? And then people weren't sure what that meant. So I used a very neutral word like characters. Characters doesn't mean male, female, robot, Catholic, Muslim, gay, straight, black, white, person of color. Character is character. And so it didn't mean good guy, bad guy, villain, whatever. Like characters are characters. And so when I asked you that question, I got the results that I've been getting for about 15 years, and I'm going to go through those with you in just a moment here. But the reason we're going through these is because I think that we're learning things from action movies, because we are kind of there was a quote from Kurt Vonnegut who said, be careful what you pretend to be because you end up being that. And I don't know if that exactly applies to movies, but, the things you marinate and the stories that you tell your stuff. And I think stories are powerful, whether you think you're swayed by them or not. You do learn lessons from them. I think it is powerful to see somebody who looks like you on the screen at all. It's also very powerful to see somebody who looks like you on the screen portrayed in a positive way. Like if there's somebody who looks like you and somebody who you identify as who doesn't show up on a screen at all, like that's really powerful. That's got to be a horrible message for you to see that you and people who you feel like you are like don't even merit being in movies or video games or TV shows or whatever. If you only see yourself portrayed negatively in movies or as like maybe as a woman who is kind of helpless but pretty and has no other redeeming values, then at least you're in the movie, but it maybe is not somebody who you see yourself as. So that being said, we're going to get into some of those results in a minute. But what I was saying is action movies, the reason we're studying them is because demographically, or I guess statistically, they make the most money. And so bluntly, the most people must be going to see action movies because the prices are pretty much the same. I know the ultra screen costs more, but like this bears out if you go back and you look at a place called Box Office Mojo and you look back at 1960s and 70s box office, action movies were kind of making the most money back to like Jaws and Star Wars and Close Encounters and all those kinds of movies. Action movies have been making the most money for a long time. And although males 18 to 34 are typically the ones who are spending all that money, they're bringing people with them and other people are going on their own. So it's not exactly a perfect science, but it is consistent. And so this is kind of my theory. So that being said, here are what my film studies classes had to say when I asked you the question, who are the greatest characters in action movies? Here are the numbers. Of the 47 people who responded, which is not everybody in all three of my film studies classes, 285 different names came up. Now, my method of like collecting this here, I didn't write down every single name because I'm not crazy, and so I didn't write down 285 names. I did get The Rock a lot, but I counted The Rock every time The Rock came up. I got Keanu Reeves, Iron Man, the Joker, I got, Batman, I got James Bond, whatever. I got those names quite a bit. And so every time I saw a name, I just counted it as a total. All right. So we got 285 people with some repeats. So it's probably less. If I had to guess, it's probably like 250 or something like that. But okay. So we got that number. Of that 285, 92% of them were men. So 263 out of 285 were men. 18 of that 285 were women. So 6% of those were women. And of that 285, 6 of them were non-human. You got your robots, you've got your Groot, you've got your, hey, wait a minute, nobody said Groot. So what's wrong with you, you monsters? Because Groot's awesome. Anyways, those are the numbers that you got. Now, here's the thing. The demographic in our class is, if you look around the room here, kind of a variety of people, right? We've got men, we've got women, we've got people who identify in various different parts on the spectrum of men and women. We've got people of color, we've got people who are white, we've got people who are different socioeconomic backgrounds. We've got people who are not necessarily people who are not from America, who are foreign exchange students. We've got, people who have seen a lot of movies, people who have not seen a lot of movies. Everybody's had different experiences. In other words, we have a good bit of diversity in this class. I would say the only things that are kind of maybe limiting is maybe we've got a lot of people who are from Fond du Lac, and take that as you will. I'm not saying there's anything good or bad about Fond du Lac. Some of you have lived here your whole life. Some of you have transferred here or whatever. But you're Fond du Lacers, for lack of a better term. Also your age, which is not a negative. It's just that all of you are very similar age, being somewhere in the range of 16 to 18, I would guess. And so that is what it is. All right. So that being said, those were the numbers that we got. Let's look at these numbers a little bit more closely. All right. So of those 285 people that we got, 263 of them were men. 252 of 263 of those men, so 95% of the men that were written down were white men. Of the 263 men, 15 of them were men of color, so 5%. Of the 285 people who were written down, 18 of them were women. 10 of them were white women, 55% of that, and 8 of them were women of color, so about 45% of that number. And then approximately 3 of them were non-human. But I do want to put a little asterisk on this one here, because of the characters, we had characters like Optimus Prime, Bumblebee, who else did we have here? The Terminator, Rocket from Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thanos. And I don't think it would be too hard to agree that most of those are male characters. There aren't many female traits to those, and I don't know why we have to, why they were, or like a character like WALL-E didn't come up. You got WALL-E and you got Eve. I don't know why we had to gender the robots, but we did. Okay. I also want to make clear, this is not a witch hunt. I am definitely not out to get white men or anything, being one. But even if, I'm just not. And this is not a critical race theory lesson or anything like that. And I don't even know what that is exactly. And there's a lot of misinformation about what that is. That's a whole different conversation. I'm using the numbers and things that you came up with, and you are a diverse bunch. Okay. So that being said, I have some questions about those numbers, as you might as well. I understand that, I asked you the question and then on the spot, you had to answer, and I didn't really give you much clarification. I tried not to give you too many examples, and not everybody answered it, and yada, yada. It's not perfect, okay? But pretty consistent over 15 years. So the question I have for you, what I want to know and what I want you to do here is, now that you've seen the results, do you agree with them, and why or why not? Do you think they're accurate? I guess agree is not the best way to put it, but now that we've kind of looked at them here, what I'd like you to do is maybe talk with the people at your tables and do a little research, come up with another list, because the word character is neutral. All right. If I said, who are the greatest men? Well, you already kind of did that, but men, it doesn't imply white men. Men are white, Black, Latino, Asian, people of color, but also women with the same backgrounds and demographics. And then also the non-human or non-gendered characters, R2-D2 or C-3PO or any of those other non-human great characters. But also, I do want to say the word character didn't mean hero and it didn't mean villain. And I didn't break down the numbers exactly, but I didn't get a lot of villains in here. And I would say that for my money, there's definitely some great heroes, but most great heroes have some pretty great villains as well, because you need something to kind of rally against, or you need some of those gray area characters like Eric Killmonger in Black Panther, who's, he's a villain, but then there's parts in the movie where you're actually make a lot of sense. And then he shoots his girlfriend and you're like, nope, you're a bad guy. And it's kind of unfair that they do that. And that's a different thing that we'll get into. So what I'd like you to do is talk with the people at your table or who you normally talk with. I'd like you to answer the question, and maybe come up with a list now that you've had some things pointed out to you where you're like, oh yeah, here's some people that I probably would have included. So let's make a better list, because I think sometimes in education, like your first reaction to something is taken as like, this is the truth. Just because you said something once and you thought of something on the spot doesn't mean that that is what you understand, because now that you've had a chance to think about it and I've pointed some things out to you, you're probably thinking like, oh yeah, there's probably some other ones in there. So, the characters that I got a lot of that we don't need to hear again probably would be like The Rock, Iron Man, any Keanu Reeves character, the Joker, Batman, James Bond, Deadpool. Like we don't need to hear any more of those. I would probably like Will Smith, Michael B. Jordan. I heard that name a lot. Bruce Lee came up quite a bit. Don Cheadle didn't. The free one. But Jamie Foxx. Like those are characters that came up. As far as women, I heard Wonder Woman. I heard a lot of superheroes. I didn't hear too many non-superhero women, and there's not too many of them. I did hear Ripley from Aliens, who is fantastic. But I'm going to come on with a second video here, or a second part, for you to play after you've done this. So talk with your group, respond to the prompt in Google Classroom or the QR code that I've posted here for you, and tell me, like, if you could redo this list, who's missing? And then I'm going to make my list and show you what I came up with. All right?